Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. Uber Company. Uber Technologies Inc. is an American technology company headquartered in San Francisco, California, United States, operating in 570 cities worldwide. It develops, markets, and operates the Uber car transportation and food delivery mobile apps. Uber drivers use their own cars, although drivers can rent a car to drive with Uber. The name Uber is a reference to the common word über, meaning topmost or super, and having its origins in the German word über, meaning above.
Uber has been a pioneer in the sharing economy, and the changes in industries as a result of the sharing economy have been referred to as Uberification or Uberisation. Uber has also been a subject of protests and legal actions.
Operations. The Uber app software requires the drivers to have a smartphone, and users must have access to either a smartphone or the mobile website. Pricing and payments. In most cities, Uber offers upfront pricing. The rider is quoted the fare that he or she will pay before requesting the ride. In some cities, Uber does not offer upfront pricing, and instead calculates the price of the ride similar to a taximeter.
The rider is charged based on the time and distance of the ride. Uber also offers promotional rates on rides to, from certain areas at certain times. At the end of the ride, payment is made based on the rider's pre-selected preferences, which could be a credit card on file, cash, or, in certain cities, other methods such as via Google Wallet or Airtel Mobile Wallet. After the ride is over, in some cities, the rider is given the opportunity to provide a gratuity to the driver, which is also billed to the rider's payment method.
Dynamic pricing. Uber fares are based on a dynamic pricing model, in which fares are higher during periods of high demand for rides. The same route costs different amounts at different times as a result of factors such as the supply and demand for Uber drivers at the time the ride is requested. When rides are in high demand in a certain area, and there are not enough drivers in such area, Uber fares increase to get more drivers to that area and to reduce demand for rides in that area. The rate quoted to the rider will reflect such dynamic pricing. In 2012, then Uber CEO Travis Kalanick responded to criticism of dynamic pricing by saying, "It's going to take some time for folks to accept dynamic pricing. There's 70 years of conditioning around the fixed price of taxis."
Uber has defended this surge pricing on its website, arguing that without dynamic pricing, there would not be enough drivers to enable riders to get a ride immediately upon request. Uber cited an example of the aftermath of a sold-out concert at Madison Square Garden, when pricing was increased. During this event, the number of people who opened the Uber app increased 400%, but, due to the higher prices, the actual ride requests only rose slightly, enabling ride requests to be completed within the usual time frame. Uber has been criticized for its extreme surcharges during emergencies such as Hurricane Sandy, the 2014 Sydney hostage crisis, and the June 2017 London Bridge attack, especially when taxis offered to transport riders for free. However, in many cases Uber later refunded surcharges incurred by riders during these events. In 2014, Uber announced that it would not implement surge pricing during emergencies in the United States.
Levels of service. Uber offers various service levels. Not all service levels are available in every city. Uber Pool is the least expensive level of service, in which the customer may share the ride with another passenger going in the same general direction.
UberX is a level of service in which the rider will get a private ride. Other levels of service provide for a black luxury car, larger car with a car seat, SUV, wheelchair-accessible transport, and pet transport. UberGo, available in India, provides for a ride in a hatchback. Ubertaxi, which is available in some markets, allows users to summon a taxi using the Uber software application. Users pay an additional booking fee and can leave a gratuity through the app. The service is designed to appease taxi drivers who protest the increased competition from Uber. Uber Eats allows users to have meals delivered from participating restaurants by Uber drivers.
The service is available in 71 cities. Uberush is a courier package delivery service available in New York City, San Francisco, and Chicago. Uberboat, available in Istanbul, is a water taxi service that allows users to travel by Beneteau boats across the Bosporus Strait. Uberboat has also run in other cities during special events such as across Biscayne Bay during Miami Art Week. Uber also offers additional services in certain cities during special events. During National Ice Cream Month, Uber users in certain cities can summon an ice cream van for on-demand delivery, with ice cream purchases billed to users' accounts. On National Cat Day, certain Uber drivers deliver kittens for 15 minutes of cuddling in exchange for a donation to an animal shelter. In some cities, during December, Uber offers delivery of Christmas trees. Requirements for driving. In some markets, where leasing arrangements for vehicles are available, the only requirement for driving for Uber, other than appropriate age, health, car age and type, and ability to drive, is passing a background check. Both a smartphone or tablet, and a vehicle may be leased. In many cities, vehicles used by Uber drivers must pass annual safety inspections and must have an Uber emblem posted in the passenger window. Legislation in some cities, such as San Francisco, requires individuals who drive for Uber to also have a business license in the city in which they drive. Uber drivers are considered independent contractors and not employees, though this has been disputed in some legal jurisdictions. Driver selfies as a safety mechanism. A mechanism called real-time ID check requires some drivers to occasionally take selfies before accepting ride requests to verify identity and prevent drivers' accounts from being compromised. History. Uber was founded in 2009 as Ubercab by Garrett Camp, the co-founder of StumbleUpon, and Travis Kalanick, who had sold his Red Swoosh startup for $19 million in 2007. Kalanick joined Camp and gives him full credit for the idea of Uber. On New Year's Eve, Camp spent $800 hiring a private driver with friends and had been mulling over ways to decrease the cost of black car services ever since. He realized that sharing the cost with people could make it affordable, and his idea morphed into Uber. Garrett is the guy who invented that shit, Kalanick said at an early Uber event in San Francisco. The first prototype was built by Camp and his friends, Oscar Salazar and Conrad Whelan, with Kalanick being brought on as a mega advisor to the company. Following a beta launch in May 2010, Uber's services and mobile app officially launched in San Francisco in 2011. Originally, the application only allowed users to hail a black luxury car, and the price was 1.5 times that of a taxi. In February 2010,
Ryan Graves became the first Uber employee, getting the job by responding to a tweet from Kalanick announcing the job opening, and receiving 10% of the company.
Graves started out as general manager and shortly after the launch was named as CEO. After 10 months, Kalanick succeeded Graves as CEO in December 2010. Graves stepped down to become the company's coup. In 2011, the company changed its name from UberCab to Uber. During the initial development of the Uber app, the company created a think tank consisting of a nuclear physicist, a computational neuroscientist, and a machinery expert who worked on predicting demand for private hire car drivers and where demand is highest. On June 20, 2017, after multiple shareholders reportedly demanded his resignation, Kalanick resigned as CEO. Self-driving car research. In 2015, Kalanick spoke about his desire to eventually move to using self-driving cars for Uber vehicles. By May 2015, the company had hired many researchers from the robotics department of Carnegie Mellon University, and established Uber's Advanced Technologies Center in Pittsburgh's Strip District.
On September 14, 2016, Uber launched its first self-driving car services to select customers in Pittsburgh, including Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto, using a fleet of Ford Fusion cars, each equipped with 20 cameras, 7 lasers, GPS, LiDAR and radar equipment that enables the car to create a three-dimensional map utilizing landmarks and other contextual information to keep track of its position. On December 14, 2016, Uber began using self-driving Volvo XC90 SUVs in its hometown of San Francisco. On December 21, 2016, the California Department of Motor Vehicles revoked the registration of the 16 vehicles Uber was using for the test and forced the program to cease operations in California.
Uber then moved the program to Arizona, where the cars are picking up passengers, albeit with 2 Uber engineers in the front seats as a safety precaution. In March 2017, an Uber self-driving car was flipped on its side by a vehicle which failed to yield. Helicopter service. In July 2014, Uber partnered with Blade to offer helicopter rides from New York City to the Hamptons for $3,000 each, including during Independence Day, in a service called Uber Chopper. In 2016, the company partnered with Airbus for a 1-month trial of Ubercopter, a $63 Uber helicopter service in São Paulo, a city famous for its extreme traffic congestion.
Uber, in partnership with Blade, has also provided helicopter service for specific events, including the Cannes Film Festival and Sundance Film Festival, with flights from Salt Lake City International Airport to Park City, Utah. Uber announced on September 25, 2016 that it was looking into urban transportation with flying vehicles. At Recode's Nantucket conference, the head of Uber's products, Jeff Holden, stated that the company wanted to someday offer our customers as many options as possible to move around. Doing it in a three-dimensional way is an obvious thing to look at. A statement at the American Helicopter Society International-led joint workshop on transformative vertical flight on September 29, Uber product manager Nikhil Goel stated that, to us, urban air transportation is simply a key initiative or our mission, right? Not only because it can cut congestion, it's got massive potential to do that, but it allows us to move people from point A to B much, much faster than you would otherwise. If you do it in all-electric vehicles, you can do it with zero emissions. Uber published a 99-page white paper, exploring the possibility of developing a fully electric, vertical takeoff and landing plane network within 10 years, for use in short journeys. Although technically feasible, the development of such a program is expected to encounter safety and regulatory obstacles.
Mapping technology. In November 2015, Uber signed a global partnership deal with Dutch satellite navigation company TomTom to provide maps and traffic data for the Uber driver app across 300 cities. In September that same year, Uber began mapping UK city streets in an effort to identify the best pick-up and drop-off points.
The lift-sharing firm plans to extend its mapping activities to other British cities including Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds.
Other projects. In April 2012, Uber launched the Uber Garage initiative in Chicago, a project to experiment with other ideas for urban transportation services. The first project from Uber Garage was to give Uber users the option to hire a regular taxi driver, or a crowdsourced Uber driver. In September 2013, Uber offered rides in the futuristic DeLorean DMC-12 car from the back to the Future film franchise. On September 4, 2013, Uber announced a promotion with the NFL Players Association to promote safe rides for NFL players. In March 2015, in collaboration with Dream Drive, Uber offered a luxury car rental service in Singapore that included Lamborghinis and Maseratis. In August 2014, Uber launched Uber Essentials, a corner store service in Washington, D.C., which allows online ordering from a list of about 100 items. The service was cancelled in January 2015. In May 2015, Uber launched its Uber Military Families Coalition, which partners with existing military family organizations to recruit more military dependents, in addition to veterans, as drivers. In that same month, Uber updated its app to include accommodations for hearing-impaired drivers. On March 10, 2015, Kalanick announced a partnership between Uber and UN Women, hoping to create 1 million jobs for women globally by 2020. However, after pressure from trade unions and women's rights organizations, UN Women declined to participate, citing safety concerns. In November 2015, in collaboration with Graben, Uber offered hot air balloon rides to customers in Hyderabad, India for 1,000 Indian rupees. In September 2016, Uber and Bobbi Brown Cosmetics made a partnership for Bobbi Brown x Uber Retouch campaign, to celebrate the launch of the retouching wands and retouching pencils. Customers got an opportunity to take a ride with a Bobbi Brown makeup artist and quick makeup course how to retouch makeup on the go. On April 11, 2017, Uber announced to launch a new patent purchase program, called UP3, which will seek to expedite the process of purchasing patents with an open application windows. Financing. The founders invested $200,000 in seed money upon conception in 2009. In 2010, Uber raised $1.25 million in additional funding. By the end of 2011, Uber had raised $44.5 million in funding. In 2013, Google Ventures invested $258 million in the company based on a $3.4 billion pre-money valuation. In December 2014, Chinese search engine Baidu made an investment in Uber of an undisclosed amount. The deal also involved connecting Uber with Baidu's mapping apps. In January 2015,
Uber raised $1.6 billion in convertible debt. In May 2015, Uber revealed plans to raise between $1.5 billion and $2 billion in new funding, raising the value of the company to $50 billion or higher. In September that year, Uber raised another $1.2 billion, led by another investment by Baidu. In 2016, Toyota made an undisclosed investment in Uber and looked into leasing options, which could potentially aid Uber drivers financially, a move in response to the other partnerships between Toyota's and Uber's counterparts. In June 2016, with plans to expand in the Middle East, Uber received $3.5 billion from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. In July that same year, Uber raised $1.15 billion in debt financing. In August, Uber agreed to sell its subsidiary company, Uber China, to China's leading taxi-hailing app Didi Chuxing.
Didi also agreed to invest $1 billion into Uber Global. In total, Uber has raised about $11.5 billion from 14 rounds of venture capital and private equity investors. Number of users. In 2015, Uber completed its 1 billionth ride, which was still below the 1.4 billion rides completed by Didi Chuxing at that time.
In October 2016, 40 million riders used the service in a single month, and that riders spent an average of approximately $50 per month on the service. At the beginning of 2017, Uber's share of the United States ride-hailing market was 84%. The number dropped to 77% in May according to second measure, possibly due to challenges and controversies faced by the company.
Effect on values of taxi medallions. The increased usage of Uber and other ride-sharing companies has negatively affected the values of taxi medallions in many cities.
Many banks that lent money against medallions as collateral faced increasing risks of default.
Gaining local support in dealing with regulators. Uber generally commences operation in a city, then, if transportation network companies are not legal in such city, Uber mobilizes public support for its service, and, supported by a small army of lobbyists, mounts a political campaign to change regulations. In January 2015, Uber announced a program called Principled Confrontation, that included reaching compromises with local municipalities on new regulations. Since implementing this program, Uber has seen 17 cities pass new favorable ordinances. Uber had worked out an arrangement with the city of Boston to share quarterly data on the duration, locations, and times of day in which riders used the app to travel in or out of the city.
This information was first delivered to the city in February 2015, and the report kept all individual user data private. Bradley Tusk, a former campaign manager for Michael Bloomberg, has played a significant role in advising Uber with respect to cities. In 2014-2015, Uber used the services of David Plouffe. In 2016-2017, communications was led by Rachel Whetstone, and Jill Hazel Baker is now the Senior Vice President of Policy and Communications.
Classification of drivers as contractors or employees. Uber contracts with their driver partners under legal arrangements as contractors, and not employees, since taxation, work hours, overtime benefits, and so forth may be treated differently by various political jurisdictions globally. This designation has been controversial. In the United States, The U.S. Department of Labor issued guidelines in July 2015 to deal with what it considers misclassification of workers. It argues that any worker who is economically dependent on the employer should be treated as an employee.
By contrast, a worker must be in business for himself or herself. To be an independent contractor, the guideline is non-binding, but is expected to have some influence in various court cases which may establish new common law around the issue. Lawsuits have been filed by Uber drivers complaining that they do not enjoy the rights and remedies of being considered employees under employment law.
In a class action lawsuit filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California on August 16, 2013, Uber drivers plead that they were employees who had been misclassified as independent contractors in violation of the California Labor Code, and demanded that they be given any tips Uber had collected on their behalf, and payment of business expenses such as gas and maintenance of their vehicles.
The district judge, Edward M. Chen, ruled in the plaintiff's favor with respect to a motion for summary judgment by defendants on March 11, 2015, holding that whether Uber drivers were employees was a disputed fact to be resolved by the jury. On September 1, 2015, Chen certified the class, but generally limited it to drivers in California hired before June 2014 who had directly contracted with Uber.
In the United Kingdom on October 28, 2016, the Central London Employment Tribunal ruled that Uber drivers are workers entitled to the minimum wage, paid holiday and other normal worker entitlements, rather than self-employed. Two Uber drivers had brought the test case to the Employment Tribunal with the assistance of the GMB union on behalf of a group of drivers in London.
Uber will appeal against the decision.
Competitive advantage due to less regulation than taxi companies. According to Marx and economist Richard D. Wolff, Uber and other TNCs resemble preceding taxi services that started out more than a century ago in the United States. Australia. The Australian New South Wales government created a task force to look into regulating Uber, stating that the existing regulatory framework is difficult to enforce, and therefore not as effective as it could be. The task force also noted that ride-sharing services appear to meet the criteria of a public passenger service under the 1990 Act, and drivers are therefore required to pay local government services tax (GST). This is despite the fact Uber claims that it is not a taxi service and should not have to operate under taxi regulation. In Brisbane, Australia, the legal status of Uber's service has been challenged by governments and taxi companies, which allege that its use of drivers who are not licensed to drive taxicabs is unsafe and illegal. Canada. Uber operates in several major cities in Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta. It does not operate in British Columbia due to the province's current transportation regulations. In July 2015, a $400 million class action lawsuit was filed against UberX and UberXL in Toronto, Ontario, Canada on behalf of Ontario taxi and limo drivers, brokers, and owners. The statement of claim alleged that UberX and UberXL violated Section 39.1 of the province's Highway Traffic Act by having unlicensed drivers picking up passengers and transporting them for compensation. In March 2016, Sukhveer Tahedi, a local taxi driver, filed an injunction against Uber. Toronto City Council amended a bylaw in October 2015 and, according to Tahedi's lawyer, Uber drivers are in violation of it. He decided to take action, saying that it could be months, or even years, if he waits for City Hall to act. U.A.E. Dubai. In January 2017, after a long spat with regulators, Uber signed an agreement with the Roads and Transport Authority of Dubai. Under this deal, Uber will be entitled to deploy about 14,000 vehicles around the city. United Kingdom. In March 2017, Uber lost a legal case against Transport for London that attempted to stop a written English exam being required for drivers to obtain a minicab license. Uber's 5-year license to operate in London has been extended for only 4 months from May 2017. Atlanta, Georgia. In September 2014, a class action lawsuit was filed by taxicab drivers and holders of a vehicle for hire certificate of public convenience and necessity in Atlanta against Uber as well as its drivers, for restitution of all metered fares collected via the Uber and UberX apps for trips originating within the Atlanta city limits.
The lawsuit claimed that Uber drivers were not properly licensed.
Austin, Texas. In March 2015, Uber Pool was offered in Austin, Texas, in advance of the annual South by Southwest Festival. In May 2016, Uber pulled its Austin program due to stricter regulations from the government, compared to most taxi companies in the United States, which use live scan of fingerprinting service that checks for matches in FBI and state databases. Uber's background check policy in Texas has been critiqued for not being as safe. The only cities where Uber mandates fingerprint scanning are New York, where a fingerprint scan is needed to apply for a taxi and limousine commission license, and Houston, which has required fingerprint scans for ride-sharing drivers since 2014. However, Uber claims that the extra step of fingerprinting drivers in Houston has slowed down driver sign-ups, and as a result wait times are on average 35% longer. In May 2016, Uber stopped operations in Austin, Texas after the city voted 56% to 44% against Proposition 1, which would have allowed ride-hailing companies to continue using their own background check systems. Instead, Uber and other ride-sharing companies would have to convert to fingerprint scanning, which is far more expensive and even less effective according to some. Uber argues that the fingerprint databases are often out of date and biased against minorities who have been fingerprinted, but never charged with a crime. Lawsuit regarding denial of services to blind passengers. A lawsuit was filed in the U.S. state of California on September 9, 2014, by the state chapter of the National Federation of the Blind, in response to the reported denial of services to more than 30 blind customers. The lawsuit claimed that the conduct was in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and California state law.
The Washington Post published a direct quote from the complaint, in which the Federation claims that its constituency face the degrading experience of being denied a basic service that is available to all other paying customers. 2 cases were described in the Post article. First, a California UberisX driver allegedly stored a service dog in the trunk of his vehicle and refused to acknowledge the blind passenger's concern upon the latter's realization of what had occurred.
Second, a driver allegedly cursed at a blind passenger during a verbal exchange, in which the latter was explaining the nature of the guide dog. According to the complaint, the driver suddenly accelerated and nearly injured the dog. while also striking the passenger's blind friend with an open car door. Uber responded to a number of blind passengers who reported their experiences, stating that since Uber drivers were independent contractors, the company was unable to oversee their conduct.
The Federation replied in a public statement that Uber closely monitored its drivers' work practices through the Uber app, that Uber advised blind passengers to notify drivers about their guide animals in advance, and that the Federation was proceeding with the filing of the lawsuit after Uber refused to enter into a negotiation with them to resolve the issue.
Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.